recording, okay? So thanks so much for spending time with us today. And we're going to be talking about investing in real estate and how to build wealth through real estate. And so it's an interesting time to be talking about that, I think. And honestly, the appropriate time to be talking about investing in real estate. So what we're going to cover today is a lot of principles that I have learned from the book Hold, Millionaire Real Estate Investor, and then also just kind of, we're going to address kind of the current environment. Mark and I talked about this yesterday of like, man, this is going to be an awesome opportunity, honestly, like a redistribution of wealth. And so we're going to kind of address that as well. So first of all, thanks so much for spending some time, and would love to know what is one thing that you want to take away from today, that if you were to spend 45 minutes to an hour with us, what would you like to learn? And so you can use either the chat box in order to chat with us on what you would like to learn, or if you'd like to just chime in if you are not on mute. We'd love to know. Just come sit with me. David, tell us, what do you want to learn? Yeah. Okay, Mark's here now. Yay, it's working. Can everybody see Mark?
I saw him for just a minute and then he left.
Huh, okay. No, we can't see you. Can you see me? Okay, well, I don't know. Okay, now we can see Mark, but there's different people. It's kind of weird, huh?
That's strange.
Where's Dave Box? Dave Box here?
He was on mine.
I know.
Hi, Mark.
Mr. Shivers, good to see you. You've got a great backdrop. I think I want to use your backdrop for all the next videos.
I'm in my atrium.
Hey, George Shivers, let's just let it be known that you made it work and Mark could not.
Hey, me and David were talking on one, so something's going on here. I think there's like two links maybe. So
No, we only have one.
Okay.
Okay.
And if
okay,
you have a green screen, you can totally change the background to whatever you want to. There's options in the settings.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And Rawls has got quite the background too, though. Look at that. That's like a city back there. So.
That is, and that's real time for him.
That is true.
Okay, awesome. So, hey, let's get started. Since y'all didn't have many questions, we'll get started. So here's kind of where we're going today is I'm going to share my screen with you. So we have a little PowerPoint that I usually go over in this class whenever I do it in person. And so we're going to kind of use some of these things today. Some of them we may not use, all of them. So anyways, but how do you build wealth through real estate? So here's kind of where we're headed is that, first of all, I'd love to just define wealth. So I'm going to ask Mark some questions and y'all feel free to chime in if you have questions as well. But we'd love to know, how do we define wealth for ourselves? How do we start adopting a wealthy mindset and understanding money? How do we remargin our lives, adjust our time perspective, and then take action? So we may not get to all 7 of these, but we're excited to spend a little bit of time with y'all and talking about how do you build wealth through real estate. So number 1 is defining wealth. So what does wealth mean to you? Sorry, what does wealth mean to you?
This is not social distancing well.
We did not measure 6 feet apart. I don't know if we could get our screen far enough back. So.
That's probably true.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it's a good question. I'd be curious y'all's thoughts too. So chime in. What is wealth, right? So wealth is, to me, has very little, if nothing, to do with money, which is fascinating, right? So wealth is freedom. So freedom to do what you want when you want to do it, right? So whether that means health-wise, or that means vacation-wise, or that means time-wise, to me that's true wealth. it's nothing really holding you back from what you're after and what you want to do. So anybody else got a better example or like definition of wealth?
So I kind of set myself up for this one. According to Gary Keller, wealth means abundance.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. Like, I love the idea of abundance in every area of your life. So yes, I think in money, but not necessarily in money and like, hey, we're going to have all of this stack of money, but like it gives us the freedom to choose things, right? Wealth and abundance in our relationships. So I think that there's a lot of wealthy, like high net worth individuals that have awful relationships that I would never want their kind of wealth, right? So I think that whenever we start talking about wealth, one of my biggest goals is that we do not leave people with a mindset of, man, if you are going to always equate it to money, that's going to be an empty well where you're going to get there and it's going to not be fulfilling if that's all that you're after. So really just having a mindset of, yeah, I want wealth and abundance in all areas of my life. So.
Well, and I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't kind of talk about, this is not a normal world we're living in. So what would wealth look like now, right? What would it look like in this current environment? Because that's where I really want to talk through, and we didn't really talk through this, but there's opportunities in the midst of all the fear and chaos and everything going on to create wealth. So I don't know, I kind of want to focus in on that because it's easy to talk through like wealth and abundance in like normal societies and normal economic times, but obviously we're in kind of some strange times. So what does wealth look like today? What does it look like over the next 6 months and 18 months, 24 months? And what does that look like? And I'm really curious, honestly. I think I like seeing, I mean, I can see you guys too, but kind of a dialogue. And I may have been asking Tara these questions, but more of going through a dialogue of what's that going to look like? Because I think there's a lot of people fearful of not even saying, man, how are we talking about wealth when I'm worried about my mortgage payments, right? And how are we talking about wealth when I'm worried about my office payment? And how are we talking about wealth when I'm worried about commissions over the next 6 months? So I think all of that kind of ties into wealth isn't all about money. So we can start there. Wealth is about, you giving to your neighbor. Wealth is toilet paper, right? Who would have thought wealth right now? Seriously, I mean, it's kind of like a joke, but wealth is toilet paper. Yeah. So we've kind of come around to talking about how to create passive income and have millions of dollars to, do you have toilet paper? Because if you don't, if you do, you're wealthy, right? So it's funny how that's changed a bit. So anyways, I'm just curious, I mean, seriously diving into like, how do we alleviate fear in this next 6, 12 months and really have an abundance mindset, right? Because what is the opposite of abundance? It's fear. Scarcity. It's scarcity. It's all mine. And it's the unknown. So I think there are real estate opportunities and very specific ones we want to dive into, and we'll dive into in the next few minutes. Because now, and I've heard this said before, but the biggest distribution and change of wealth ever in the U.S. was actually during World War II. Coming out of that and into the Great Depression, or actually that was before World War II, the Great Depression into World War II, and the wealth that was created outside of that. So there's an opportunity here to create wealth, but it really does start with, and we're going to talk about this mindset, having an abundant mindset.
Yeah. Love it. And one of my favorite books is actually called Today We Are Rich. And the whole premise behind it is at the very beginning, he tells the story of his grandma that was very poor. They lived off of rice and beans, and they had someone walk up to their house, and anyways, they were able to like give them some food and kind of help him on his way. And anyway, she looked at her grandson at one point and said, today we are rich. We have enough for ourselves and we have enough to give to other people. And so really defining richness or wealthy in that, like, do you have enough for yourself and enough to give? And enough for yourself is kind of funny, right? Because, man, we have abundance. Like, even in this scary time, like, this is still the best place to live. And wow, what an opportunity that we have to give to people that really will be struggling during this time. So, yeah. Okay, cool. So after we define wealth, let's keep moving on. So would love to talk, number 2 is about how do we adopt a wealthy mindset. So would love to know, how did you adopt a wealthy mindset? Like, what do you feel like a wealthy mindset is, and how did you adopt it? What were things that helped you along the way?
Yeah. To me, wealth is, it is a mindset first. So I just remember, this was maybe 2-3 years ago. I was driving home, and we live on this curved street in Lubbock Park, and it's got big trees, right? So I'm driving home, and I'm thinking,
Can y'all see us? Okay.
Yes.
There's some people that can't see us, I guess.
see,
We're watching David Lost for the flu.
see those two Zoom
Maybe
rooms.
you should open yours then. That's so funny.
There's-
Listen, George Shivers.
George, I'm proud of you for knowing how to pick over this.
George Shivers is on the right line.
There's some kind of visual trick.
That is hilarious. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, we're going to connect to these two Zoom rooms and be on the same one. Oh, look, Tammy Waters, Greg Brown, Aldo.
Hey guys,
Two different rooms.
we've got
Okay,
two
cool.
Zoom rooms. Can everyone see me in the Zoom room?
Look, this is what happens when Tara's in charge, is we're going to have two different Zoom rooms. So, Sisty, you're in both. I don't know how you did that, but I'm impressed. Okay, cool. Hey, can y'all hear us? Tammy Waters, can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us?
Gilbert can. Oh, Tammy can.
Tammy can?
Oh,
Okay,
cool.
good. Y'all can hear us. Okay, cool.
Sorry about that. We got two Zoom rooms going on, so we got two computers now. We have a slideshow going on the other Zoom room. Wouldn't even know how to tell you to get over there.
Oh, I can do that. Okay, cool. So tell us, how'd you adopt a wealthy mindset?
Yeah. So, anyways,
you're-
we got interrupted. But I think what the mindset start with really being thankful and grateful for what you have, right? And that's really high-minded. And especially going in the next 6 months, I think it's gonna be very important. But I was driving home one day, curved street, Melanie Park. I think it's always easier to think you want a bigger house, nicer cars, and all that. And I literally, maybe for the first time in my life, I can stop and said, I love everything I have, and I want nothing. And it was kind of a weird place, being kind of driven and always wanting more, and more deals and more income and more, right? So I think that a healthy mindset starts with stopping and being incredibly grateful for what you currently have, and even content in what you currently have.
Okay, so did that just come to you, or
Just hit me like lightning.
Lightning? But do you think that it's really just a decision, or is it like a practice? Because I would agree. I mean, it's interesting, even thinking about contentment. Brad and I kind of have this argument / conversation a lot of what is contentment. And I think contentment is an attitude, but it's not necessarily a destination, right? And so an attitude that you can have along the way. But how are you always content, or do you have to? Always.
Yeah, you can ask my wife. I'm always content. No, I think it's a learned practice. I think it's a healthy daily kind of get up, and one of the main practices that I think can really help you in being content and really understanding a wealthy mindset is being grateful for what you have, and then practicing that. So writing handwritten thank you cards or whatever it may be. I don't do that as much as I used to, but seriously, it's one of the best daily practices you can do is wake up every morning and write 3 handwritten thank you cards. And it kind of sounds self-serving, but really what it does is it puts your heart and your mind in the right place of realizing what you have is enough. Whether your dreams come to fruition, whether everything comes exactly the way you want, whether wealth comes to you as far as monetary standpoints, what you have is plenty. And really that is kind of the wealth mindset. That what does it do? That attracts wealth. If you have that mindset, what does it do? It attracts more wealth. It attracts more relationships. It attracts more of what you're after. So I think it starts there.
Awesome. And yeah, I would totally agree. And I think that it's a daily practice. I mean, it's interesting. I think also living around people that have that wealthy mindset, it's a whole lot easier to adopt that. I had a text message this morning from a girl who had surgery yesterday, and she was asking, who can she be praying for today? And who can she encourage today? She's just golly, you are the one that we need to be praying for and encouraging. And yet she's always looking for being intentional and reaching out to people. Anyway, so I think it's awesome to really help develop yourself in who am I who am I surrounding myself with, and are they people that will have that wealthy mindset too?
Right.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Cool.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next one. After developing your wealthy mindset, I think that also is in knowing your purpose. I have this awesome picture of my parents because, man, they're a lot in that developing a wealthy mindset for me. My mom and dad, they can see the good in every situation. It's really pretty incredible. So also love this. So I'm going to leave this up here for a second. This is what Gary Keller says is whenever you're adopting a wealthy mindset, that you need to know the 6 truths about money. And so would love to see what y'all think about this. So what do you think?
Well, we got half our group that can't see it. So key to happiness is not more money. Happiness is happiness. Money is money, which is very true. Whatever your life is about money, whatever your life is about, more money will amplify it. Yeah, these are great truths. So I do think it's a lot of unlearning, right? So as you get older, you have to unlearn as much as you learn. So you have to unlearn that money will make you happy, right? And I think it's a lie that we're taught at a young age of that rich people are happier. If you're famous, you're happier. There's plenty of miserable famous people. There's plenty of miserable happy people. So I think that is very true and kind of undoing a lie. You can't buy style with money. You can't buy good taste or good decisions with money. You can only buy more money with money, which is true. I'm just trying to get it up here.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can screenshot that. We can send it to you, but I think that it's really good. I also love number 6, that money has its own rules. And so if you choose not to learn them, you are choosing financial illiteracy. And truthfully, there's a lot of people that just are financially illiterate. Like they don't know even what to think about money. So how'd you learn about money? Was it from your parents or?
No, I mean, definitely self-learn, right? So I think that's where you want to always be a reader, always read. So there's some great books out there, and there's a slide coming up at some point showing some great books on money. But you've got to teach yourself about money. They don't teach you these things in high school, right? We were joking about it on our team just last week about somebody was asking a question about taxes, and I'm like, "What? You didn't learn this in high school?" So it's crazy what they don't teach you in school and in college. So you have to teach it yourself. Or you can find a mentor. You can always call George Shivers. He's very, he's there to help with all your tax questions.
He can't hear us. Surely he would smile.
I know.
Golly, George Shivers.
Oh, okay. We can't. I didn't get in the laugh. So no, but I think being you have to be self-taught, and it's really unfortunate. But there's plenty of people to teach you. Seriously, I'm happy to help with any questions you may have. I know very little, but everything I have taught on to is from Dave Ramsey or Rich Dad Poor Dad book, or there's so many good books out there on having a wealthy mindset and actual truths about money. Tony Robbins out there really good on. He's got one called Money Master the Game, which is really good. So there's plenty of books out there to teach yourself about money, the truths about money, because there's so many lies. If you look at, one of my rules of thumb is if you're taking advice from a guy in a private jet that's like trying to sell you something, that's not the right guy to be taking advice from. Okay, he's trying to sell you something. So read. We'll give you some good resources that people aren't trying to scam you out of money.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I would also say is like you just have to start on the journey. It's interesting. I kind of tell the story of I was in a room with about 20 different people. Hey, if you don't mind, if you're in the room with background, just mute yourself. Anyway, so I was in a room with about 20 people with Tim Minnick, and Tim Minnick said, I want to help make millionaires. And I was really surprised afterwards. I was the only person that went up to him and said, hey, I want to learn.
Right.
And so how few people actually will take the steps necessary in order to actually discover what it is to build wealth with real estate. Anyways, so I would say just go on the journey, for sure. Go on the journey of, are you gonna build wealth and who are you learning under? The other thing that he had me do is he said, I want you to create a net worth statement. And anyways, that's interesting. Go try to create a net worth statement. And I literally Googled, how do I create a net worth statement? It was when Brad was still in physical therapy school. I had student loan debt. He didn't have any debt. We had a few other things that were debt to us. And he was like, oh my gosh, you're about to go into the owner of Keller Williams and show my net worth statement. Like, he knows that we're not worth anything, right? And I was like, I'm pretty sure. But he's about to know if he doesn't. Anyways, but like, man, the power of looking at a net worth statement, put it on an Excel spreadsheet and then go back and update that. But really what you focus on expands. And so if you just like really start making decisions based off of a net worth statement, it'll change your decision making, because you won't make decisions that you used to make just because you're looking at a net worth statement and you're like actually tracking that. So do you have a net worth statement? Do you look at it? How often?
Yep. At least monthly. I mean, I call it.
Dang, you're good.
Personal financial statement. So also once you get into the bank world, they're going to ask your personal financial statement every so often to update their books.
Yeah.
So I just keep it updated every month, and then obviously it tallies up your debts and liabilities and your assets and cash. So, and then spits out really adding and subtracting your net worth. So kind of speaking like more like to what are some practical tips. I think it's really good. So 2 things so far, right? So taking notes. Number 1, I think be a self-learner. Definitely teach yourself about money with some great books. And then number 2, right? Create a net worth statement. And if you don't have one, like, let us help you. Like, there's no shame in where you're at. A lot of people are negative net worths, and that's okay. It's a great place to start. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but you have to know where you're at. So many people will bury their head in the sands and not know where they're at, because it's a lot easier to do that, a lot less shame in that. So start by having a net worth statement. Start by knowing where you're at. Well, there's a cute baby on one of these screens, so
such a cute baby.
It's not fair, Kyle. You can't do that to us.
Such a cute baby.
So anyway, so I think that's so key, and we'll dive into possibly personal finance, but and so as we go through this, I'm gonna make sure you guys leave the very practical things you can do. So number 1, read great books. Number 2, create a net worth statement, and then we'll dive into like actual things you can do to dive into the market right now, because even with all the craziness going on.
Yeah, so I think that we go to that one, like, hey, we have to start retraining our brain. And whenever I start retraining our brain, what I mean by this is like your personal finances. So me and Mark will kind of talk about, here's my philosophy, is that how you do anything is how you do everything. And so there's a few people that will tell you, hey, it's okay. It doesn't matter what your personal, how much money you have saved, how much cash you have. You can go ahead and start investing. And I'm going to be on the side that will say, how you manage your personal finances is also going to be how you manage your business finances. And so I think start with your personal finances. You have the most control over it. And also I understand you may not have complete control over it. You may have to get on the same page as somebody else in order to do that. And yet that's a really good thing. Like, you should be doing that, getting on the page with somebody else and having hard conversations. And so I think your personal finances needs to be the first thing that you look at. And how do you retrain your brain on how you spend money? So I think that living in a reality of most Americans, if you're going to follow like the trend of what most Americans do, there's 1/3 of Americans that have no retirement savings. And so, do what?
Is this on this one too?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
That's right.
Anyways, so like realizing that the reality of, if you're going to kind of live in this rat race world, you need to look really different. And if you don't look different, that's a little scary because you're following in line with, I mean, even to see over here, only 13% of Americans have more than $300,000 saved for retirement. I mean, that's scary. Like, that won't, it's not going to last long.
No.
I mean, especially with life expectancy going up, right? So anyway, so as you're retraining your brain, like, you should look weird. You should look different. And so that means we're going to move on to this next slide, and would love for Mark to.
Yeah, well, you do have to look weird, and I look weird. I mean, you can ask my team, but and a lot of my friends, like, literally, we just moved over to Altice Mobile. I know it's terrible. I drop calls all the time. I'm not endorsing it, but we're constantly looking at ways to save money. And literally, it's $40, $44.13 for 2 lines a month, which is just insane. So it does look weird, and it makes no sense to the practical world or to most of the world. But I think, especially in this economic time, if I could give you one piece of advice, like going into the fear and uncertainty of what's happening, you have to slash your budget. I want to give you a percentage of like 33%, but you have to look at all your subscriptions and everything you're paying for right now. And please, please, please either pause them or like just eliminate them. We're going into some uncertain times. So there's 2 reasons to do that. One, just to be financially savvy and to make sure you have enough for you and your family. But really the second reason, this is the positive reason to do that, not out of fear, but there's going to be a lot of opportunity come in the next 6 months. There's going to be a lot of good real estate deals you wish you had the money to buy. There's going to be a lot of businesses that you wish you had the money to invest in. There's going to be a lot of ideas that come to you. You wish you had the money to start a new business. And so in order to do that, you have to make sure your personal expenses are cut. And so on here it says housing, transportation. I mean, any car payments you can get down, housing payments you can get down. But really, what's creeping in is subscription services, eating out, things like that. They can really cut down, and honestly, that extra cash will allow you and set you up for opportunities to invest when the opportunities do arise.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about seeing this is when Wendy Papazane was talking about wealth building. She said, and a lot of people will come tell you, stop buying an extra Starbucks drink. And she said, yes, that is great. And yet, if you look at that big chunk, 33% spent on housing, 17% spent on transportation. She said, if you really want to make a difference, then what are you driving? And do you really need to be driving that, right? And I think about, man, how most Americans spend money is on car payments and having nice luxury cars. And I know a lot of millionaires and their cars are not great. Honestly, they're kind of like the worst. Anyway, so one of my favorite speakers, I don't know if you know Gene Rivers at Keller Williams, but he owns a few market centers, a few regions, right? And he teaches wealth building classes, and he kind of makes this kind of like funny remark around that a lot of people make fun of his car because he has a very old beat up Suburban. And he says, whenever people make fun of my car, then I say, okay, that's fine. And I also park it in my mountain home and at my beach house. So you can come to my houses, right? Anyway, so it's just kind of this funny, like, where do you really want your wealth built in? And then housing. So 33% is spent on housing. And I would say, man, if you have maxed out, or don't ever, like this is great advice for anybody, don't max out what the bank says that you can afford on a house. You should not be buying a house that the bank says you can afford, and that's what you need to purchase. So you need to be spending a lot less on personal things than what society would tell you is acceptable.
Yep.
So
totally agree. You gotta get weird, and that's David Ramsey says that, but it's something true in these crazy times.
Yeah. So live like no one else, right?
That's right.
So one day you can live like no one else. The other side of that is that the truth is credit cards, like it just has no emotional attachment whenever you spend a credit card. It's actually like fun swiping. Like they've done studies of what happens in your head, and it has no like pain associated with sitting with a credit card. So I would say if you're struggling with how do I start living on less than what I make, then you need to start retraining your brain by actually having cash. And yeah, that's going to be painful, and it should be. Like you want it to be painful so that you can start being weird. So yeah. Has there ever been a time where y'all had to retrain your brains, you and Aaron, or have y'all always lived below your means? Like,
I mean, we've always been frugal. I mean, I think we have to retrain our brains, and I think there's 2 camps, right? There's the spenders, which is not always a bad thing, to be honest, where they just feel like they feel confident in what they're doing. And then there's the people like me that I would say have a poverty mindset. So I think you can retrain your brain that way too. I think naturally poverty mindsets are, I'm going to keep and save money. So I think you either have one or 2 of those mindsets, and it's really just how you were raised. So I've had to come up kind of the opposite of saying, man, it's okay to spend money on some things and to give and to live an abundant lifestyle. So I think you got to rein in credit card spending, no doubt, but I think there's the other, some people listening to this may think, man, actually I did the poverty mindset too. So training through that and relearning and rethinking, through that was really important for us.
yeah, it's awesome. So, I didn't know that you had that mindset. Surprising to me.
Well, I think it's just around money really. And so just growing up, not really having money, or much money, or not thinking we had money, yeah, I think it's really interesting to undo that and unwind that. So, and it's just to be honest, that's just as healthy and destructive as, having, a kind of a flippant response to money.
Yeah.
They're really the same thing. There's so many opposite extremes. And usually somebody ends up somewhere naturally throughout life, unless, you get good people teaching you or mentoring you kind of enter that middle ground.
Yeah. I would say I'm naturally the spender and Brad's naturally the saver. So
Right.
we have this good balance.
Right. Spender and saver is better than poverty mindset and flippant mindset. But it's like a nice easy way to say it.
Yes.
But no, seriously, I mean, you probably have one of those two mindsets, and so or you naturally lean towards one of those two mindsets, and so neither one are wrong. As long, but really in the middle is probably where you need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I would say the most important thing right now to do would be go back, even if you think that you're doing really well at this, go back and say, how can we spend less in this current economic environment? How can we start spending less personally?
Yep.
So would highly encourage you to do that. And there's been a few podcasts that have come out recently on just like, how do we do this? And Zoom trainings on how do I have the conversation with my spouse around this. So I would definitely recommend that.
Yep.
So, okay, cool.
And that would be like the third thing, right? So let's go through. So number one was, make sure you're reading really good books on money, which is actually coming up right here. So read some of these books on money and how to think about money and how to manage money. Second was obviously do your net worth statement, have a personal financial statement, Excel spreadsheet. Like I said, it may be negative, and that's okay, but you've got to know where you're at. So that way you can start chipping away. And then number three would be, whatever we were talking about. Oh, cut expenses, right? So cut expenses. It's now time to cut expenses. So look at all your expenses, look at personal expenses, look at business expenses. I cut them by at least 33%. You can, you're going to say that's impossible. And I think that's the point, right? It's supposed to feel impossible. So if you're on AT&T, maybe you go to Altice. If you've got you're the same cable company for a long time, maybe you cut your cable. I mean, there's so many ways nowadays. If you're looking at your house, maybe you need to refinance your house. It's a huge way in these interest rates. We'll talk about that in a minute probably, but it's a huge way to save money on your housing without even having to move your house. But there's a lot of ways in this new economy, in these new markets, to save a lot on what you drive. Maybe you need to sell one of your cars. Maybe you need one car for a while. I mean, you've got to look weird to undo a lot of your old spending habits.
Yeah, it's great. The other thing that I usually say here is I know that I'm in this flippant mindset because I struggle with the flippant mindset. Anytime I have these words that run through my mind, and anyways, I hate these words now, but to be truthful with y'all, that they happen. And it's whenever I start saying, man, I deserve this. So I have oh, but I deserve to go on this trip, or I deserve to have a new car, or I deserve, right? And it's like, oh, that's when I really have this awareness about myself of I need to step back and realize that, man, actually what I deserve is very little, right? And anyways, and it just is an awareness that I have to get out of that mindset. I don't like that mindset. That's not my goal, is to be that person. So anyways. So yeah, and I do agree with Mark. Like, I think that you should be, we talked about this yesterday while we were getting ready for this, but you need to be considering refinancing your house. Brett and I just refinanced our personal house. And I know that y'all are kind of getting ready to do that.
Yep.
What we were wanting to do is just making some cash available. And so I would recommend that you would make some cash available to yourself. So there's a lot of equity that's probably tied up in your home, or I hope it's tied up in your home. So refinancing at some really low interest rates and taking some cash out, I think is a really great idea. And then we're also looking at refinancing some of our personal houses too, and what that would look like to just kind of capitalize on historic lows. Like, it just makes sense to do that. So.
No, I think that's good. That may be my number one tip for today. Like, if you want to build wealth in today's markets and economies amidst all the chaos, now is the opportunity. So people say, get into the stock market when the stock market's low. Well, get into real estate when interest rates are low. It's the exact same equivalent, right? Mm-hmm. So you're just getting cheaper, payments, more cash flow whenever you do buy into them. And also, when everyone else is selling and freaking out, and investors can't lend to, or investors can't get time printers for their houses, we need to be ready to buy those houses. Like, there's going to be so many opportunities coming to the market. So the only way to actually jump into those is obviously got to get your personal finances under control. So you have the cash and availability to do that, because the opportunities are coming. they're here, but they're also coming. I mean, we've had really strong economic times for the last 10 years, like really unprecedented economic times. But now the crash is here. And so with the crash being here, it's really the opportunity that as investors, we should be craving. Like this is the time that we can, and it's not going to be easy. Like I don't want to say it's going to be easy, because what will happen is you'll buy a rental house and you'll expect that you can get $1,000 a month in rent, right? Well, who knows? Let's just assume for the next 6 to 18 months, you can only get 700. So you may have to float the extra 300 through these bad times. But we're going to rebound. It will rebound. It will get back to normal. But the opportunities have to be offset by the risk as well. So there's going to be some risk there. So anyways, as she was saying, definitely refinance. What we're doing right now is I've already started an application with Texas Tech and whatever mortgage company you want to use. Interest rates are kind of up right now for the minute. They dropped 10 days ago, like to the threes and beneath 3. But I expect them to drop again in the Nostradamus here. But I really do think they're going to drop again. All the analysts say that probably will drop again to the 3s or below 3s. So go ahead and start your mortgage application. So the moment they do, because we're in crazy economic times, they could jump really quickly too. So go ahead and start your mortgage application. So that way, whenever it does drop beneath that 3 again, you can lock in as much real estate as you can. So I'm even doing, let's just say, cash out refis. Cash out refis, you're going to look at probably, it's going to be a little bit higher rate than what you get on just a normal refi. But you're getting, in my mind, literally free money. And I get it's 3% funding. But after your interest rate deduction on your tax return, it's next to nothing. And so you're going to want to lock in as much real estate as interest rates as you can. Take that cash out. That also allows you to just have more financial flexibility for other opportunities and just make you feel safer during this unknown time. So definitely be ready to refinance and then buy as many rental houses and lock them in at as low rates as you can.
Yeah. So I have this on the screen. It's on mortgage rates, and mortgage rates, just so you know, like historically, like holy cow, we just have never been in a time where you can borrow money so cheaply. So this goes back all the way from 72 to where they are in 2019. And even 2019 was a historic low, and it was at 3.9%. So just like thinking that you can get money, that you can borrow money at 3% is just, it's unprecedented times. Like, holy cow, take advantage of this opportunity and do it in your personal house, in your rent properties. But then, yeah, as far as borrowing money, I think that it's really good. So anyways,
okay. That's a whole other mindset. Yeah, I had a retrain actually. So having a poverty mindset, I really leaned into Dave Ramsey saying debt is bad. So how do you leverage and how do you create wealth without debt? Because Dave Ramsey would say debt is bad. So I'll be curious your thoughts on this too. But so really retraining my mind, think, okay, Dave is right. Most consumer debt is bad. Student loans debt is not great. So there's a lot of debt that isn't great. So he has to make a hard stance. He has to put a hard line in the sand saying that debt is bad. Because he's got such a general approach, right, to everyone, and that is a truth to everyone. So how do you balance that with, but how do I use the bank and leverage that and grow wealth, right? So anyways, I do have to retrain my brain around that. So now I really think, because we're in real estate and we know the local markets better than anybody else, we're crazy not to invest in local market. How many realtors, here's a question, how many realtors, as you coach most of them here in the office, how many realtors invest in the local market? What would you guess the percentage is?
1, maybe 5%. I mean, literally.
Right, 5%.
Yes.
Right. 5% of real estate agents, let's say in the local market, actually invest.
Crazy.
I mean, I know they're not at Keller, but I know a few of the top agents at other companies that have been around a long time. They have 1 rental property or 0 rental property. So they've been selling real estate for 40 years.
Yeah.
Just blows my mind because of the opportunity. And Mark Cuban says this, and well, actually, I don't know who says it. We kind of made fun of whoever said this quote, but real estate is the only industry that allows insiders. If you see a good deal on the MLS, you can buy it. If you come across a good deal from an off-market investor who just wants to cash offer, you can buy it. Please get with your broker, make sure paperwork's right. There's my caveat.
Yeah.
But you can still buy it.
Cam loves you now.
That's right. So it's really phenomenal that people aren't investing in real estate. So that's the upcoming opportunity. So there's going to be a lot of people trying to get out of real estate because they're nervous about what's coming, and they just want to get liquid cash. So leverage with the bank with these low interest rates and get into a stronger real estate owner position.
Yeah. So I would agree. Okay, so on to choose to grow. The other thing, one of my favorite quotes is John Maxwell says, if you're not contradicting yourself, then you're not growing. And so one of my things, it's funny, whenever I put up this choose to grow, there's kind of like two sides, right? Like a Dave Ramsey side, and I love Dave Ramsey. I think that him and Chris Hogan are incredible, and Brad and I would not be in the financial position we are today without the teaching of that. And then there's this completely opposite side of Robert Kiyosaki, right? And anyways, and I love that there's like a contradiction, because the truth is that you need to decide what works best for you. Like we have a strategy that we're going after. We have a comfortability with like, okay, this is the amount of risk that we're comfortable with. And I think that me and you would be on different sides of that, right? And so I think you've just got to find out, have a healthy conversation with your significant other of where are we going to land on what we feel like is an appropriate risk. But yeah, I would agree with you. How I view debt is, I think there's good debt and bad debt, and good debt for me is real estate, or whenever I'm borrowing bad debt, essentially it's, if I'm buying an asset, I think that it's good debt. Bad debt would be cars, personal debt, like consumer debt. I think that you need to get rid of all of it. And that would be my step one would be get rid of all of your debt. Like whenever you start saving more, right? And you retrain your brain to start spending less. And really, to like put this simply to you, I feel like there's two types of people. I heard this on a podcast and was like, okay, where are they going with this? There's two types of people. There's people that spend all their money, and there's people that save and then spend their money. Like there really is. It doesn't matter if you make $100,000, $500,000, or $30,000. There's those two types of people, right? And so for me, it is not, if you were kind of saying to yourself, oh, I'll start saving or I'll start doing this once we reach this level. The truth is, I don't think you'll ever get to that level. You'll get to that level and then you'll decide, okay, it's the next level that we can start. Then we can start saving. Anyways, so yeah, thoughts. Other one that I love is adjusting your time perspective. I know Mark is so good at this. So I love this idea though of a lot of people used to have this time perspective of, oh my goodness, I'm just gonna go and learn, and then I'm gonna go and work, and then I'm gonna go and play whenever I retire. And that instead, you should have this time perspective of it is learning, working, and playing all the time. So how do you do that? Y'all do well with this.
Well, I think it first starts with really, or I haven't retired yet. I think retirement is a lie. It's kind of something I've said, like, I've seen so many people work their whole life and put their head down and retire at a certain age and then get there and not have whatever they're after. So realizing that now is what you have. Even if a quarantine home with your kids, right? How are you going to be learning, working, and playing while you're at home and creating that cycle? Because that is the healthy, essential parts of life. I've actually never seen that slide, but that is how you create true wealth, right? Is you're always learning, you're always working and playing all at the same time. You're right. So I think so many people like put those in like individual categories.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to go to learning season in school, or I'm working season, or I think they have to be intertwined all into one.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's good.
Okay, so good. And then my other favorite one, so this is from Bowman Keaty. Bowman Keaty is also a guy pretty high up in Keller Williams, but just an awesome guy. And he says that, most people have this perspective of over time, I'm going to get wealthier. And he said, that's actually not how it looks in reality. And you're just setting yourself up for a huge headache and a lot of heartache if you think about wealth in that way. And I would say wealth, success in marriage, like anything that you think about in that way. So actually it looks like a lot like this graph, is that it takes a whole lot longer for you to kind of see a difference, right? Anyways, and so most people will give up around here, right? Like right here is when they give up because they think, oh man, this should have happened already. And so really just having a long-term perspective of wealth. And especially right now.
I would even say, sorry to cut you off, but so look at this dip. So people are okay with going a little bit backwards, and then there's like this dip. At that point, they just panic, and that's when people freak out and say, I'm out.
Yeah.
To me, like maybe it's right here, but once you start seeing an up curve, it's easy. It's whenever there's a dip going down they think but once again, that goes to failure. You got to be okay with failing, and you got to be okay with time and failure, because with time and failure, that's where you get to where you actually want to be.
Yeah. One of my other favorite quotes from Gary Keller, he said, "I've never lost money in real estate."
That's phenomenal.
The only time you lose money is whenever you sell, right? And I would say that this is what happens though, going back to kind of reiterating some first of our points of, man, I've seen people sell at the wrong time because they didn't buy it right, or their personal finances weren't right. And so they have to get out of something in order to fix a problem at home, right? And so again, making for sure that you go through these steps of, you've got to get your personal finances right first before you start investing in real estate. Otherwise, you're going to have a financial crisis at home, and it's going to be, I've got to sell at no matter what time it is. If it's the worst time in the market, which we may be seeing some declining in prices over the next 2 years, and we'll just kind of see what happens. I don't think that it'll stay there long, but the only time you would lose money on that property is if you have to sell it during that time. So making for sure you have enough money down. And then number two, sorry, I got so distracted that your values don't go down.
Your kids are fine.
Yeah.
So here's what I'd say though also. So I think we're going into obviously unprecedented times with like maybe we talk about commissions and like income and things like that in the real estate world, or if you're a business owner. So we have to get creative because the opportunities are there. So even if you say, hey, listen, I am negative in my net worth and I don't really have the ability to buy real estate, right? So then partner. Fine, there are plenty of people that come to me. I mean, come to our team. We would be happy to either partner with you or find a resource with you, or partner with an investor that, you know, you can bring a deal to the table and make more than just your 3%. That's the environment we're going into, where there's going to be, you know, bigger spreads on these deals that people are trying to get out of. So be creative around ways to make wealth over the next 6 to 9 months, not just always thinking 3%.
Awesome. So good. Okay, so we're going to walk through this really quick. So this is just a really simple path of money. So there's 2 ways that you can get money. Either you're working for it or it's working for you. It will produce cash flow, which then you have 4 choices of what to do with it. You can spend it, donate it, save it, or invest it. And I think like essential is you've got to figure out what are your percentages for each of those. So how much are you going to spend? How much are you going to donate? How much are you going to save? How much are you going to invest? And so that every single time you receive money, it's like it's already pre-decided of where they're going to go. So then when you invest, there's kind of 2 different options. You can lend money to somebody else, or you can own the asset yourself. And whenever you're lending and owning, there's 2 different ways that you can take approaches. You can be very passive with that, or you can be very active. And I know that a few of you asked, how can you get this? I will send this out in a PDF to y'all so that y'all have this. Anyway, so this is like essentially, it's so basic, and yet I love it because it really just makes you bring it down to a simple level where you can't overcomplicate this. We overcomplicate stuff and it just makes us where we can't take action. So make it really simple. There's 4 ways I can choose. So every time I get cash flow, I'm going to choose, what am I going to put this into? And then the basic options. So let's just go over lending really quick. So lending wise, if you wanted to be really passive and have your hands off on something, then you could put your money into a money market account. Do you know what money market accounts are getting right now?
Oh gosh, no.
It's kind of,
they don't really exist for our generation.
it's crazy, right? Which would be CDs too, bonds, T-bills. So this is essentially you giving someone else your money, and they're going to park it and you can't touch it, and they're going to give you an interest rate back. But typically that is like 1 to 2% maybe. You can own it, and you can own stocks, REITs, mutual funds. You do not have control of it, but you are putting your, your money into something that does have a very passive. You're not going to get to decide what choices Disney makes, but you can own a stock of Disney, right? And man, that's a lot of people have said like over time, that's really good. And I would say over time, it gets like what? Historic 8 to 12% returns,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So also I would say, hey, I think that you need to have eggs in all of these baskets. I'm not great at this. A lot of our eggs are in real estate, right? Real estate businesses or real estate. And yet if real estate takes a turn, like we want to have eggs in other baskets. So I'm not trying to say I wouldn't have money in any of these baskets, I would highly recommend. Do you all have money in a mutual fund or?
We do, yeah. We're looking at pulling it all out and put it in real estate. So, you know, I agree. I've heard, you know, you want to balance it out. That's probably the safest approach. However, the safest approach is invest in what you know.
Yeah.
And what do you know? You know local real estate. And so I don't know stocks that well. And so I'm kind of trusting Dave Ramsey, my financial advisor, that they know it. But I don't really like feeling out of control of it. So that's why we're actually looking to reposition some of our mutual fund money back into real estate, because we know real estate better than anybody else. And so, and if Gary Keller said he's never lost money in real estate, I don't know why we wouldn't all follow that advice. So I think you can have a balance, but I also would be very, don't be scared to do super heavy real estate or mostly real estate or all real estate. I don't think that's crazy at all.
Okay.
Because people got to live somewhere, right?
Brad,
So
I hope you're listening.
yeah, I mean, if you look at the stock market, right? So look at the stock market. So it's gone down. It's floating around 30,000, it's at 19,000. So it's lost what 40% and 30% in literally 10 days, and now it may go down to 15%. So you may lose 50% of your money. Real estate's not going to do that. I mean, people have to live somewhere. They have to live somewhere, and so they don't have to have their money in stocks. They don't have to have their money. That's why everyone's pulling out, but they still have to pay rent. They still have to live somewhere. So home prices may even drop a little bit. I mean, rents may drop a little bit, but not 50%. That has never happened. And I would be surprised if it ever did happen. You know, some of the bigger markets, I guess there's been big corrections in like Miami and Las Vegas and Phoenix back in the 2008 crash. That was because of an isolation of the bubble, and where they really, what they did is they appreciated too quickly. And so that's why I love it real estate. If you look at appreciation rates the last 25 years, 30 years, 50 years, I mean, it's 1 to 3% every single year. That is sustainable, right? So you're not going to see the massive crash, I don't think here. So, you know, so that's why I love it real estate, Texas real estate in general, but even DFW's talking about 10% a year, which is not sustainable. You can see crashes from that. So yeah, this home prices thing is great. You can kind of see where they're going. We're actually behind the curve of where they should be without the 2008 recession. What will happen is we'll be behind the curve again, potentially even more over the next 18, 24 months if this goes on, because it'll stabilize home prices as far as appreciations. But
these are things that I would put in front of your investors as far as home price and mortgage rates, and we'll send this out in a PDF. But man, that's so valuable to know. Like, man, your investment is safe, right? Like, as long as you're making a wise investment and know that going into it, you always, I've heard this, you need to write this down. You make your money whenever you buy the property. And so you've got to be wise about when you're buying the property, right? But other than that, I mean, you're buying a really stable investment. Anyway, so.
Yeah. And I think the prime time to buy, so here's, you want to talk about making wealth in real estate, right? So the prime time to buy is, it's here and it's coming, right? So 50% of the equation is already here. 50% of the equation is interest rates. So interest rates are at historic lows. So you need to lock up as much real estate as you possibly can at this historic lows. Well, what's probably going to happen over the next 18 months is you're also going to see a price correction in the market. So in a perfect world, you're waiting for interest rates to be down and the prices on properties to be down. And then when those intersect, it literally, there's no better time to buy real estate. And that's what's phenomenal about real estate. You can even buy with higher interest rates and higher prices, and it still makes money. So if you're looking for opportunity, you want to lock as much real estate as you can in the next 6-12 months. Find the deal first, right? Find the deal that's undervalued. So look at current values today, and even if they drop, I mean, let's say it's a $100,000 house, you can pick it up for 80 grand. Are you kidding me? You instantly made $20,000 just by buying a piece of real estate. That's real money because you bought it 20% below market value. And even if market values drop, then we all know within the next 2 or 3 years, it'll be back up to the 100, probably 105, 110. So you created 20 grand by just buying something. You can't do that in stocks. Stocks, you got to hide and watch and wait. And hopefully it goes up. Hopefully the CEO doesn't do something stupid. There's all these hopeful things. So that's why we love real estate, is from day one, you create instant, it's equity, but it's also cash, because somebody else would come in and give you 100 grand a month for it, and you can make 20 grand instantly.
Yeah. And the other crazy thing is you can't go buy, I mean, $100,000 worth of stocks. No one's going to lend you $80,000 to go. I mean, that's crazy, right? Anyway, so there's just a lot of power in real estate. So the two best ways to make money, honestly, is by owning a business and owning real estate. So those are active investments. And then I just kind of show what does it look like on a rate of return? What does it mean? whenever you're getting a rate of return. And so this is pretty powerful. Like if you are having money that is sitting at the 1 to 5%, that's pretty much dead money. Like you're not increasing your money at the rate that inflation is increasing. You're getting a safe return if it's between that 5 and 9%, a healthy return 9 to 11%, and then wealth is actually built whenever it's more than 13%. So you can write that down because we're going to show you a real life example of one of our personal RIP properties. So anyways, I'm going to go through that really quick, but just to kind of give a simple formula, how you would calculate a rate of return is you would just take what is my return divided by my initial investment, and then you're going to multiply it by 100 so that you can get a percentage. Right, so what is my return is if there's 3 ways to get a return in real estate: appreciation, debt pay down, and cash flow. So what is your return in a year divided by what you actually put down onto the property, and then you would multiply it by 100% in order to see where do you line up inside of that where money is working for you. Anyway, so I'm going to show y'all just a real life example real quick, and we're going to wrap this up in like 5 minutes. So otherwise, Mark's going to leave me, and he gets real bored after 40 minutes. So
I mean, I'm just surprised y'all are still listening to this because y'all have great attention spans.
Mark does not have that great of attention span.
Good job, guys.
Yeah. Okay, so it's going to seem like we were really smart. Honestly, this was not like the best, okay? Anyways, but we closed on a house in 2011. It was a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath in Tech Terrace. And so if you live in Lubbock, then you know that that's a really great area. And yet it was pretty high. Like I remember walking into it like, holy cow, we're buying a really expensive house, like price per square foot, probably highest in Lubbock. We have a few of criteria. I would love to know what is your criteria whenever you're looking at houses, but I'll just tell you real briefly. Our criteria is number 1, we want to put 20 to 25% down in the property. And that is because a mentor of mine, which is Tim Minix, really told me, hey, that's what you need to do. And that way you would be able to weather a storm. If the market does turn, then you're going to be able to weather that storm. So we put 20 to 25% down. We want a 15-year note, and we want it to at least cash flow. And like literally we're looking for like, we don't want to be spending money on it, but we don't have to have like a certain amount of cash flow on that. The other weird one that people make fun of me on is that I would wanted to have lived there whenever I was in college. So if it's like, not a great property, I really just don't want to own it. So anyways, what's your criteria? What do y'all look for?
It's ever evolving, right? Because I think the box is always changing. So I think it used to be I wanted a brick house, 3-2, and something that I was comfortable putting my family in if we ever needed to live in it and be there. So that's definitely changed because now the opportunity in knowing the market in different neighborhoods, like even east side houses and things like that, and aren't events in the northern sides of Lubbock, like I wouldn't personally live there anymore, but we just know the market so well. We're super comfortable owning real estate out there because of the rent ratios and your equity positions from day one.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, anyways, you can see our cash to close on this property was $21,000. We put 25% down on it, got a 15-year note at 4.38, which is why we're considering refinancing. Maybe we could get it lower than that. Anyway, so I'm just going to I want us to assume that you're not going to get cash flow because I like what you had said. It's also interesting in the rental environment right now. Eviction notices are not being taken right now by the Lubbock courthouse. Anyways, and so it's interesting environment. Minix Property Management sent us out a great video that just kind of highlighted like, hey, this is what you should be aware of during these times. And so it's an interesting environment. So I'm going to assume that we didn't have any cash flow. So you can see this on here and whenever I send it out, but I want us to assume whenever we look at the rate of return that we didn't have any cash flow. Anyway, so after the first year, and I went back and like looked on the MLS, actually it appraised for $78,000. So we didn't get a great deal. It was $75,000 is what we paid for it. It appraised for $78,000. Anyway, so a year later, I'm just saying that, yeah, but we could have sold it for $78,000. So $78,000. So that means that from 75 to 78, that is a $3,000 difference divided by what we put down. So again, you're taking your return divided by your initial investment, and then you're going to multiply it by 100. So 0.14 times 100 is 14%. So just with appreciation, we made 14%, which I would go back to that this
Which is
slide
good.
and
Yeah.
say, already you're in the wealthy,
Yeah.
right? Like already you're above where the stock market on average 8 to 12% is holding, right? So after year one. So that is year one appreciation at 4%. So we made 14%. Debt pay down. So somebody was paying us money, we were paying that money to the bank to pay down our debt, which after year one had been paid down by 2,714 divided by our initial investment is we made 12.5. So let's just leave cash flow out of it. And after year one, even if we had no cash flow, we would have made a 26.5% return. Just crazy, right? Anyways, and then I do the last example of 5 years later. So 5 years later, that house was now not worth $75,000. Again, I went back and looked at the MLS and said, what is that house worth now? And it was 105. So $30,000 divided by that initial investment is now we made 140%. Debt pay down, we had paid down $14,835 on that note. And so that divided by our initial investment is now a 69% return. So let's just calculate that without the cash flow, because say we didn't get cash flow for 5 years, which again, we're looking for something that at least we can get cash flow on. So even if you're going to go through some hard times, it's also going to rebound. But that would be 209% divided by 5 years, which mean that without the cash flow, we would have been getting 41.8% return on our money with that property.
Right, and that's your true cash on cash return, right? Because that's how much cash you put in or they put in versus cash they're receiving back. So,
well, not exactly, because the appreciation isn't cash
appreciation,
necessarily that we're receiving back and debt pay down. So it's just cash.
it's just cash you put in. So,
Yeah.
but cash to, return on investment, I guess is the right term.
Mhm.
But here's my other thought, right? So you can also get in properties for 0% down, right? Which is really crazy. So there's creative ways to do that. So we can kind of ask us later, maybe we can have a class on that. But there are creative ways to get properties with zero money down, as long as you buy the right property, the right deal. So by doing that, what would your return be? It's literally put in the calculator. I think it says infinity. I didn't really say that, but
It can't.
it just can't
even-
calculate, right?
Yeah.
Because literally, if you put in no money because you found a good deal and then you did some creative financing and got into it because of your ARV, which is, what the property is truly worth. I mean, it's just insane how good of a return that is. Because once again, $100,000 you want to invest in the stock market, you have to have $100,000 to put in the stock market, which is hard to do, right? So, and then even then, the bank's giving you all the money, so you have zero cash. So what return on investment on that? It's literally infinity. So, anyways, real estate is absolutely the play to do. And here's maybe my last piece of advice is we got to get more aggressive with this. We're not aggressive enough. We're all going to look up in 30 years, 10 years, 15 years, and wish we would have bought more real estate. I promise you, I can hit myself every day, just pinch myself every day. I don't hit myself. Just thinking, man, I've got to buy more real estate. I've got to own more. I've got a lot more under debt. I've got to cash flow more. And it's not even about the cash flow. I'm assuming zero cash flow because I've got in my real account almost every year after pay taxes, it's still close to zero and even somewhere already paid off, which is crazy. So it's not about the cash flow, but the forced appreciation of what you're seeing down here and the debt pay down. And honestly, the other third factor is depreciation. As you're creating money, it's another huge tax advantage from a tax standpoint. Is you're depreciating your real estate off your tax return. It's actual true cash advantage that's not even calculated here. So your return is just astronomical if you add all those things together and you got it for zero money. So we've all got to buy more real estate. So if I can help you do that, I'm happy to help you. But we're going to look up, and I asked Mike Brody this too. I said, if you had one piece of advice for somebody my age, I think it was 30 at the time, what would it be in creating wealth? He said, I would buy more real estate. And I've heard that from everybody. Everyone has seen the market in the 70s and the 80s and looked at, they were buying houses in Lubbock for 30, 40, 50 grand in good neighborhoods. Right now they're going for 150, 200 grand. All they had to do was hold it. That was it. Just hold it and break even.
Yeah.
So we've got to buy more real estate as a community, as realtors, as just investors. You've got to buy more real estate.
Yeah, best thing you can do for your family. Yeah, and as you're saying that too, I get this message from. I would also say you're going to have to get on it. Like I think the last thing would say, man, take action. There are people that are taking action right now. I got a text from somebody saying, hey, I want to speak about buying this house that I have on the right up there. And I'm like, hey, no, I'm not going to sell that property. I mean, I guess everything's for sale at the right price, but it has been pretty good for us. And I would say, man, it's good for us to do these. I mean, a lot of it for me has been, I love teaching this wealth building class because I have to look at this again and say, man, is there anything that I'm getting a 53% return on? Then why in the world am I not going out and buying more real estate? Because I wasn't the smartest person. It wasn't like the best buy, right? Anyways, but over time, it's going to pay off. And so, yeah, you're going to have to take action, but you're also going to have to get aggressive with your action because you're competing with a lot of people that want to buy investment properties too. So you've got to take some drastic measures to start getting in that area where you're looking for opportunity and going out there and finding it.
Yep.
So
Bye. You know, what do they say?
bye.
Bye. It's what NSYNC says, you know, NSYNC, bye. Is what it says. So no, anyways.
Next time we're going to have Mark dancing to that.
It is time to say bye and also buy real estate. So do both, please.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so hopefully this was helpful. Man, I already learned a lot about Zoom and that I may not have it all set up right.
What's interesting because your ID
I
is
know,
exact
it's doing the exact same. That's what I thought it was. Anyway, so we're going to learn about Zoom. But thanks for joining us. I will send out this PDF to everybody that logged on. I've been also recording this, so we're going to put it on our closed Facebook page. But feel free to reach out to Mark or I when they have to Zoom in order to kind of, you know, have the appropriate social distancing because we need to go wash our hands and drink some water real quick. So that
One last tip, because
okay.
somebody said something about another thing you can do is if you have credit cards or debit cards, cancel your credit card or just cancel it, freeze it. Even if you have recurring payments on there, it really. So I do that about once a year. We'll cancel our credit card and get a new one, really for reward points and some other things. But also what it does is it forces me to decide if I want to have these recurring payments. And it's amazing. Every single year, there's probably 4 or 5 or 6 that say, why was I paying? So there's a lot of that in your life nowadays, I guarantee it. So make sure that that's cut out in one way. It would be to either freeze or cancel or cut up some credit cards and start with a new one.
That's awesome. Yeah, love that advice. Okay, cool. Hey, thanks so much for spending time with us. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to talking soon. Okay.
That was really strange.